Welcome back to Pastor Plek's podcast. I'm your host, Pastor Plek, and I am so excited to have with me in studio today none other than Senor Cody Sparks from the Cody Sparks Band. How are you doing, Cody Sparks?
Still here.
Yep, still here. And then also, longtime listener, first time to be on the podcast, Natalie Lipscomb. How are you doing?
Doing great.
Like this, I know you're probably like, this is an honor above all honors, and you just can't really even believe that this has finally happened to you.
That's pretty much where I'm at, yeah.
And then another longtime listener, first time, guest on the podcast, Laura Allen. Like, wow, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, how are you feeling right now?
I feel honored, to be on the other half.
Yeah, so
on the other side.
Yeah.
Thank you for the sarcasm. Love that.
She might have a little bit more of a. What I learned so Laura watched our kids yesterday, and so what I learned from that experience from Adrian, who said, Laura's really chill. Now, if she was like 18 years old, you'd be like, oh, the whole house is going to implode when I leave. But she's just like, yeah, whatever, it's fine. And then the kids loved her. So way to go. If anybody wants, I have four children, and so she managed.
4 boys, not children.
Yeah, sorry. I have 4 boys,
that matters.
10, 8, 6, 4, and somehow they all came back like just loving Laura, and they wanted more Laura. And so that really worked in our favor. So if you ever need anybody to do some babysitting, just let her know. All right, so we are talking, and we've been in a series called Give, Save, Live for the past several weeks. And it's funny. I think our attendance declined by like 30% going through anytime you talk about money. It's sort of wild. Like, I just went back and I was like, where'd everybody go? And I think, and this is just true of everyone. Usually people are like, oh, they're talking about relationships. I need to be there for that. I need relationship help. But when you talk about money, I'm like, I'm good. That's where I feel like that was what I talked about is people are more comfortable talking about sex and porn and all that kind of stuff than they are talking about money because money is too sacred. And so what we went this past week, we talked Give, Save, Live, where we just kind of reviewed what it is to be a giver and how that's, the first percentage that you should be giving or to do with your money is to give it to the Lord through your local church. And then the next thing you need to do is save. All right, save is pay your future self. And we talked about your AC is going to go out. You're going to need some money when nobody wants to pay you anymore, but you still have to live and do the ministry of the Lord for free, or rather on the paying yourself. Your young self pays your future self to work for free. And that's just a beautiful thing. And so I want us to kind of keep that in the mindset. But then living, how do we live for the Lord? And we looked at 1 Timothy chapter 6, and specifically in 2 parts. One where Paul tells Timothy on how to pastor those people who have this desire to be rich, meaning they look at themselves in comparison to their culture like, I'm not rich. And he said, listen, the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. And so I was wondering to know, just from our panel here, how you've experienced the love of money and it being the root of all kinds of evil for you, or maybe not for you because you're above all that, for somebody that you know personally. Ready, Natalie? It's up to you to take this question and move us forward.
Yeah. I would say it's interesting the all kinds of evil because it doesn't always come in the form of greed.
Right.
I think for me, it has come in the form of fear.
Okay, how so?
Just not knowing if I'll have enough. I kind of had a point where I was in college for a long time and didn't have a full-time job. It was just kind of making ends meet. But then when I got a full-time job, okay, I have to do this on my own. I have to budget things out differently than I have before.
Why?
And
once you got a full-time job, then you felt like you needed to budget as before you just like rolled with it?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It is interesting. I don't know if that completely makes sense, but in my mind.
That's like, hey, listen, I don't have any money. No need to budget. Oh gosh, now that I have a job and it's a functional, stable income, now I need to really, that's interesting. It's like, was it like you became an adult?
Yeah, I think I knew how to live beneath my means, but my means got higher and I knew I had to be responsible with it.
Wow, that's wild.
So
all right, tell us what you do.
I'm a speech therapist.
Okay, and so where do you work at?
I work in the Round Rock ISD
Wow,
school system.
That makes you hardcore.
Does it?
Yeah,
Oh.
It's like you're on the front lines of the battle.
It feels like it sometimes.
Yeah. And
Makes me nervous to talk.
So, and when you, yeah, absolutely. She's probably judging your articulation 100%. Right now.
Yeah.
We judge Cody all the time for his pronunciation of your name.
Sorry, I have an accent, because I'm from Texas. My bad.
It's okay. I don't judge Texas accent.
Thank you.
Other places.
So what age student do you work with?
I have 3-year-olds through 21-year-olds.
So you have like a high school kid who's like can't communicate well, and you help him. Do you help him with like the way his mouth moves and that kind of thing?
Sometimes. Okay. It's usually language deprivation. So I'm working with language mostly.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. And so for you, like stepping into this, it was a fear of security, which then drove you to budget when you became an adult and you sort of realized, I have to do this on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Laura, what about you? Just like, when did it kick in for you with like, or did it kick in for you like a desire to be rich? Was that ever a thing for you?
A desire to be rich.
Mm-hmm. Or to have as much as everybody else.
Greed.
Or to kind of, it's not necessarily greed, because it could be just like...
A desire to be successible.
Okay.
Well,
which then money comes with that.
And maybe it's like, I don't know, do you have a mark of money as success in your life? You don't have to like make up a sin so that we have something to talk about. But
No, I won't. I have plenty. I think...
Do tell. What's your... No, I'm just kidding. What on this area, what's the battle?
In this area, I think it wasn't clear to me until kind of I moved here from Georgia to start a job, and I had worked since I was younger, but I wasn't aware of myself personally, and that I did like compare myself growing up, compare families, compare what we had. Like I wasn't aware of that until I became an adult, and also until I got serious pursuing Christ, that I realized, oh man, there's a lot in my heart around money, and a lot of it was fear too, fear-led, and a lot of like keeping up with the Joneses, and I didn't realize that I was doing that, or that I was using
How did that manifest
that.
for you? Like when you, because I think that's probably something that a lot of people have, but nobody wants to admit. Mm-hmm. I just want to have as much as so and so. Like, what was it? Like a bank account? Or because it's not like people walking around with their bank accounts like with a little display screen of what they have. But what was the thing that like, oh, they have a nice car, they have a new outfit. What was the thing?
Honestly, maybe just peace for me.
Okay.
Like, it was
so
they're not worried. It's like a scarcity mindset, like being jealous that somebody else wasn't in like a scarcity mindset, or like that they could just have
they felt
something
free
accessible.
with their money. They when they would talk, they weren't talking about like, don't know how we're going to cover the bills this month. Mm-hmm. And you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
And it could have been they were just completely oblivious and deep in debt, but you had no idea.
Also that true.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, there's a lot of $30,000 millionaires running around. You know what I mean? Like, I think that probably in Austin, you've got a ton of people who look like they have a lot of money and they actually have zero. And then you probably have a ton of people who look like they have no money and then they are loaded. So that is sort of the wild part of the Austin life. What about you, Cody? Like when you're a country music star, traveling the road with all the fans and thousands of people just, hurtling money at you. What was that a struggle for you, a desire to be rich, or was that just something that you're like...
Well, it was a desire to be successful, and if you're successful, that comes with things like more money and more fame, if you will. Yeah. But I just wanted to be successful, and I knew that the bigger we got, the better of a life that I could have.
So, talk to me about that, because I feel like this is the problem with rich. Like, what is successful? And like when in music, when do you make it? Because you got a couple songs in the top 10 of Texas country music. Yep. At what point do you go like, I'm no longer settling for my alternative career or whatever, I now am making it. What was that point?
Well, it would go off of one of my favorite lines ever, and we did this the other day. So Forrest Gump line here, where he said, he called and said, we don't have to worry about money no more. Right. And I said, well, that's good. One less thing. So, but for normal people, you're always worrying about it. And I think that it takes money to make money. So is there really a peak on it? I mean, you're always either investing or wanting to invest or find extra ways to make money on the side from what you're doing. So, we were talking about retirement yesterday, and I'm going, oh man, I still get royalties in the mail once a month. I get a check in the mail once a month from
Spotify.
songs. From
whoever.
From all the platforms that you put music out to. So even when we were talking a while ago, I was like, man, well, that's nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a ton of money, but it's some. But that just got me thinking, okay, how high is high enough?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that had a lot of insecurities growing up because, like, one of my girlfriends that I had broke up with me because she needed security, and I didn't have a plan, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, or all of these things. So now, moving forward in life, I'm like, man,
I would love to know which
having
girlfriend that was.
security. Do what?
I'd love to know which girlfriend that was.
It wasn't one of them that you're thinking, because we won't have to worry about money no more. That's for sure. No joke. But still, it's like it's a big worry.
Yeah.
And where do you get to a point? The more money you make, the bigger house you get, the more expensive cars you make. But it's like plateaued. It's like, when do you ever?
When do you make it? Yeah. When is enough? Right. And I think that's the struggle. So there's this desire to be rich. And then on the flip side, Paul wrote to Timothy about ministering to rich people. It says, hey, as for the rich in this present age, which is a wild thing to say. I mean, you got to think about, like, okay, listen, you're dealing with people who just have this desire to be rich. And then you're dealing with people who are rich. And they may not know it, which is the funny. I think most people, when you go, are you rich? They go, no, I'm not rich. And then the reason why they're not rich is they can name off several people that they know that have more money than they do. And then you go, those are the rich people, or maybe you don't. This is where it gets difficult, right? And I think the struggle is, if you live in America and you have 2 cars and you can buy coffee at $6 a cup, you are rich. Let's just go down that. And so, like, probably everybody in the room, I'm not gonna say everybody because our church is pretty diverse socioeconomically, is that you probably are a person who is rich. And if you are rich, he says, listen, there's some advice for you that you need to be rich in good works, be generous and ready to share, and then you're gonna build up for yourselves treasure essentially in heaven and take hold of that which is truly life. So I think that there's this part too that you should be able to enjoy the gifts God's given you. One of the verse 17 kind of says, like, hey, don't put your hope on riches, but on God who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. And so I think sometimes with Christians, especially young adult Christians who don't have any money and sort of can kind of be angry at people who do, or like they think they don't have money, they go, listen, you can't enjoy that. But I mean, what I mean by that is don't enjoy a lavish lifestyle. And gosh, this is the part where it gets so challenging. Because at what point is it lavish, right? This is like, when you have a house with 2 air conditioners, is that lavish? Is it having 2 cars, buying coffee at $6 a cup? At what point are you now lavish, or is it too much? And I think that's the struggle. And I think you're always going to be faced with that. And so I think at some point you've got to be able to, you can either go around walking guilty all the time or judging all the time, or you can enjoy what God's given you and not worry about what God is doing in anybody else's life. This is Romans 12:3. Don't judge another man's servant, but each should be living according to the measure of faith that they have. But the point is that we are not people who believe that material things are evil, right? That we talked about the hammer. A hammer is not good or bad. It's just a tool. It can be used to murder or try to murder Frank Pelosi, or it could be used for, which is evil, by the way.
Build.
Which you can use a hammer to build a church, right? So like it goes either way in evil or good, but enjoy what God has provided. So I think this is where I got a question in. I'd love to get your guys' feedback on this. This came in from this week. I'm a young entrepreneur in my 20s. I'm a 1099, which if you don't know what 1099 is, that's like at the end of the year, you don't get a W-2, you get a 1099. That says, here's all the money that you made this year in this whatever entrepreneurship job you got. And it's kind of like your gross, and then you pay taxes off of that. And that's how you know how much you make. And I only make income off of commission. I agree with setting money aside to advance the Lord's kingdom, so giving. However, I believe in seeking generational wealth for myself and my family, saving. My question is, how does the Lord see my aspiration for wealth? If I trust in the Lord and to believe in myself and the Lord in order to generate my wealth? Am I still walking with Christ in my finances? Love to hear your thoughts on that, Miss Natalie, on if he trusts, and I don't know if it's a he, but if this person trusts in the Lord to believe in himself and the Lord in order to generate his wealth, is he still walking with Christ in his finances? What do you think?
I think that speaks to the tension you were talking about on Sunday, of you're having that tension between giving and saving, and really being conscious of that and in prayer for that. So it's one of those things like, why doesn't the Bible give a perfect formula? It's because we are supposed to be following the Lord. Some people, the Lord has more in a poverty role.
Right.
And some people, the Lord has blessed with a lot of wealth.
Yeah.
And the wealth is to bless others. So God has a different path for everyone. So when we try to interpret everybody should be the same, what am I supposed to do? Why isn't it blanketed for everybody? I think that really loses the personal relationship with God of what does he have me? What is he calling me to do?
I really love what you're saying there, because there is this sense of I need to have a relationship with God that is consistent enough that I can pray through things like giving. And can I just go back to why people probably have a messed up relationship with God? It goes back to their own parents, right? Your parents are proxies for God. If you jack up your relationship with your kid, then your kid has a skewed view of who God is. And so a lot of us who've grown up with jacked up parents have skewed views of God. And so what I mean by that is, if you've sort of felt like God was always angry, then if you had an abusive father who was angry or like abusive, then you're sort of like, cowering, like, oh no, he's gonna be upset if I spend too much money on myself. And you might have trusted Christ. He died on the cross for your sins, rose from the dead, but your still view is it's like sort of like, all right, you're into, I guess. And you don't see it's God's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. You see it as like, you kind of put on your dad goggles onto who God is. And so you look at God as sort of stingy with grace. And so you feel bad when anytime you spend money on yourself or you're not giving 100% of it away. And so what I want people to sort of wrap your head around is it kind of goes that direction. But there's also another direction, like God doesn't care because he was like your father was absent. Like he wasn't around for those conversations like, hey, here's the girl or guy you should date. Hey, man, I'm noticing you're making some bad decisions on something. And you could have like a conversation that went back and forth and you didn't feel judged, you felt loved the whole way through. And yet he was able to influence you to do the right thing, not because he was like, but because he was able with love to influence you. And so if you sort of have this, you've been abandoned by God, you sort of feel like, well, God doesn't care about that. You kind of go in this like, what does God care about? There's a lot more crazy problems in the world because you had a dad who was gone all the time, who did have more other problems to go and solve. And so he didn't have time to have those conversations with you. So I think there's that spread across the board. And maybe you had a coach dad that was like always encouraging and you're like, you're going to be better. You're going to be better, kind of a person. And you've never arrived. And so like you're like, I haven't saved enough. I haven't given enough. And you're always in the tension of like, not enough. And so I feel like we've missed out on the grace of God when it comes to dealing with the Lord. And so finances just becomes an extension of that, like the rest of our life. That's why you have anxiety and worry and relationship issues. There's emotional disconnects in some weird areas. And so I guess, Laura, I'm now going to go to you, so prepare yourself. Right. So when it comes to that mindset with money, do you feel like your parents have skewed that at all for you?
Oh boy. This is everything that you just said, just straight up ministered to me. And it's what I've been basically sitting on, praying on for like the last 2 or 3 years, just addressing like, there was a disconnect between me and God growing up because of that. And I feel like I didn't have enough time or space to break that down until moving to Austin, and like geographic distance
gave you the maybe spiritual, intellectual space to think through some of the past and kind of say, this is my dad and this is God. They're different.
Yes. And piece through like, why do I think that I didn't see God over every circumstance of my life? Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until, here that God allowed for me to like completely break down all the pieces of like, why am I so scared of money? Like why all these things? And it does come from that because money was a big, like, we didn't talk about it, or it was a stressor. And so I think I went far the other way, kind of prodigal Sonny, of just like, when I moved here, I got the nice paying job and I blew it. Like I blew it all. I we were talking earlier about debt. Like I went into credit card debt. I blew my money. I partied. I did all of that because I was afraid of money. Like my thing was like, please don't focus on money anymore. Let's focus on like emotions and how are we? And like, I just put money so far aside because I hated that it was a focus growing up and that it like took so much emotional capital.
So instead of like saying, because there's another way you could have gone, which was like, I'm not going to spend any money because money's not worth it. But you went like, let's go party!
Completely not logical and not thinking about it. But
that's fascinating.
Yeah, and I met people at my first job here, like getting the job that I did was like, it completely changed my life because I looked at, it was in tech sales. And so I was looking at basically your Ecclesiastes series spoke to my experience too. It was just like, oh, I have people that I'm working with that are my age that don't spend a dime. I have like adults that I'm seeing their tech sales and their everything that they earn is their identity. Like they don't have good marriages. They're on their 7th marriage, like whatever, but they're a great salesperson. Like sales really put a mirror to my own heart and like, what do I care about? What do I want for my life? And so, I met other people my age that were really good at never spending a dime, but it was just as bad and just as distracting as my like, let me blow it because I don't want to look at how I feel about money. Like we were complete opposite ends of the spectrum. But that had me turn it back around to start piecing out like, this is an emotional thing. Like I do believe in Christ. I understand this is a heart problem.
Yeah.
Like what is the root of why I blow this? Like what are the emotions? What's all the things tied to it? And a lot of it was upbringing. And,
so man, what I think is so important, and now I'm just going to go on a tangent here, but what I think is so important is a lot of us are Christian and we would say, you doctrinally orthodox, it's amazing how you are just solid, way to go, that Jesus is the substitutionary atonement for your sin, his resurrection is life. But a lot of us are functionally either atheists or functionally agnostic at best. And here's what I mean by that. Your doctrine, your orthodoxy doesn't connect to orthopraxy. Ortho is right or straight, so think orthodontist. Doxy is like the glory of God kind of thing, or right thinking. And then right practice, orthopraxy, those two get disconnected because your right thinking of who Jesus is doesn't necessarily then go and fix all the brokenness of how you view a father, of how you view family, of how you view money, which is why you can't just go, you don't, it's like Jesus teaching. Remember, this is what's so interesting. So remember when Jesus presents himself as a savior of the world, he could have just been, landed the plane on that. I'm the savior of the world, just focus on me, the end. But he does go into money. He does go into relationships. He does go into every aspect that probably gets jacked up in different cultures in different ways. Because we have a skewed view of God based on our parents. So I think one thing I want everyone sort of leaning in to hear is that when you get saved, that's when you start to sort of organize your life and you turn chaos into order by bringing under Christ's control, taking every thought captive, the things that are not of him. And for some of us, there might be things that you do that you don't even know are not of God. So I want to bring that in because I feel like it was such a powerful point that you brought up. Is like you don't even recognize some of the darkness in your heart because it was just sort of like you just lived in a cloud of chaos and that was normal for you. And then Jesus comes in, orders this part, but you have this emotional barrier towards money or towards email or towards, Home Depot workers, whatever the thing is of like, I know I'm going to have this interaction of an emotional disconnect that I can't deal with certain people or certain things.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
With the parental question, coming at it from a child's perspective of a lesson that my dad taught me that I didn't appreciate at the time that I do now. Hopefully your kids will come back and say the same thing about you, that you made a lot of wonderful decisions that they resented at the time. But all my friends growing up had allowances, and which is good and biblical and to teach your kids that way, but my dad taught me a different way. He said, you can just come to me whenever you need anything.
Nice.
And I will give it to you. You just don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah.
And I grew up being afraid to ask. And I see that a lot in my relationship with God of I'm afraid to ask, even though I know he'll say yes and I know he wants good for me. And I saw that in money and kind of being scared to spend because I was scared that the more I asked, the less he would give. And I know that my dad would have kept giving, but it was still scary for some reason. And I see that with my relationship with God. He's a giver of good gifts. He doesn't have any limit. He wants us to be persistent, and we see that in scripture. But my mind is telling me the more you ask, the less he'll give. And I wanted that control. I wanted that control as a kid to be like, okay, I know I have $5. I have that control of my $5. I can't just ask for something that's $10. Because he said he would give me more. If it would be less if it was an allowance, but it would be more if I would just ask, because he wouldn't deny me things most of the time, but I wouldn't.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I kind of went the same route with no allowance, but I never asked for money. It just sort of showed up, and then as now I think about it, that's how all my life goes. Like I don't ever ask for money ever, and just like all of a sudden, just random stuff happens. I'm like, oh wow, look at that, look at that, look at that, and I'm truly grateful for it. And I see that's God's hand, and that does take away the worry. Wow, my own advice is paying off. It's true. All right. Cody, you're a pastor's kid.
That's right.
So talk to me about like how did your dad teach you with like money, and did you have a Natalie experience where we didn't do allowance, just come to me and I'll just give you whatever you want because I'm your dad who loves to give generously?
Word of faith. Yeah.
Yeah.
I say what I have what I say, and I want to have enough. I want to have enough money that I can bless people with it. Without that, how do you spread the kingdom? You don't. So
because your house, you guys always had random people over for the holidays.
All the time.
Yeah,
all the time. Random people over for anything and everything. We have like an open door policy where our friends never knocked on the door.
Right.
Our friends would just walk in the house and sit down at dinner or just say what's up, which was great. I'm not like that now.
Don't come over.
It's fine. I've also had a few experience with things going south with people, but that's for another day and another story.
Were you thinking Ja'Cory?
100% Ja'Cory. And putting trust into people. I have been burned so many times in a lot of areas. So my wife will say, you trust everybody. And if somebody says something, you just believe it. I'm like, yeah, I trust people, but I've also gotten burned a lot. So it took me a lot of time to realize that people aren't always out there for your best interests. But back to like raising, like we would get money every Sunday and we would give. Like we would have to put it in, and we were taught to tithe. So we were really raised on that and raised on blessed to be blessed.
Right. Not raise your standard of living, raise your standard of giving.
That's exactly correct.
That's awesome. Yep. Yeah, I think that's the viewpoint here. And just back to this question to whoever asked this, I feel like wanting more money or desiring wealth to bless others, right? To create generational wealth, I think that's actually Proverbs 13:22. You know, a good man gives to his children's children. Like that's an inheritance. And I think there's a part of that where I don't think that part gets talked about maybe enough. I hate saying like, where is that? Like as if there's some ethereal place where this should all be talked about. But I think that there is a reality of like inheritance is a really great thing to bless the generations with. And I just, when I think about my house, I think about my grandfather, like, wow, what a huge blessing that was for him to give to me. And so whenever we talk about our house with my kids, and like that my grandfather, allowed us to buy this house. What a beautiful thing that is, because it's a perfect way to say like, here's what happens when you can bless the next generation. So all that to say, if you're trying to build your own kingdom, that's the part where it goes dark. And so for this guy that's asking this question, I would say, man, I love that you're asking the question. I love that you're pursuing that. Just the big thing, you're going to wrestle with your heart, and nobody on the planet will be able to tell you which direction to go, because only you know your heart and God knows your heart. But when it comes to money and finances, you're going to be riding the line. Am I wanting more to have more than somebody else, because we all want everyone to get by. They just don't want anyone to get by us. And so that's the struggle. Am I trying to get by someone, or am I trying to raise a standard of giving so that whenever I see people, I'm generous and ready to share? And so I think that's really the thing. Like, is your heart about being generous and ready to share? And are you looking forward to the day when you can give away more, or are you looking forward to the day when you have more? I think that's the ultimate question. And it gets tricky because it's, again, there's this deal of like, you need to have money for when your air conditioning breaks. You're gonna have to money. When your car breaks down, you're not gonna have an eternal car. You're not gonna have an eternal air conditioner unless you rent. Then you probably will, but then you can't really leave inheritance that way. Anyway, so there's a lot of different ways to kind of go about life, and I think to kind of, for a lot of people, they sort of like judge others and sort of like kind of create their own little sphere of that. So anyway, other final thoughts on that, Cody?
No, there's been a lot of times where I've been going, holy cow, this doesn't make sense number-wise and bank account-wise. And I'm like, oh, this is not our relationship. This is our deal. Let's fix this. This is how this goes. Yeah. And like you, random things happen and random things come up. And it's like, okay, here we go. Yep. Here we go. Yep. So that's been huge for me. And it's just faith and trusting that God is faithful and he always will be faithful. And thankfully, I was brought up with being taught that, so I don't worry. Now, I married somebody that is more or less a worrier as far as we need to be saving, we need to be on top of this, we need to be on top of that, where some of us are chilled back going, yeah, God's got this though. But at the same time, you have to be aware that God puts opportunities in your life for you to prosper and for you to make extra money or have a better job and things like that. And sometimes we look at it as, oh, it's just another opportunity, I'll pass up on that, when God could be 100% putting that in your path for you to take advantage of.
All right, give us, Natalie, you're pushing financial peace on some teenagers, which is really exciting.
Credit to Kyle Brown there.
Yeah, Kyle Brown, way to go, Kyle. So talk to me about that, and has anyone taken you up on it yet, or have you just gotten the offer?
I just sent the text right before we started.
So fun. Okay, so tell us what the offer is.
Kyle Brown offered the 2 youth that came to our last meeting, if they put the money in to start it and went through with the program, that he would reimburse them the money, which is really cool, which that would extend to any of our seniors that want to take it. We will make that huge happen. I'm not putting that all on Kyle. Like, we will come together as a team and do that.
Yeah, Kyle's paying for everybody. So when does the Financial Peace University thing start?
June 6th.
June 6th. So if you're listening to this before or after June 6th, just know that it's going to be every Tuesday for 9 weeks starting June 6th. And we would love to have a whole bunch of people, including teenagers and people who graduated from being a teenager 50 years ago to come. That would be an awesome experience to get out of debt and to learn how to budget and all that. Are any of you guys, like, when you think about budgeting, is that a strength of yours or is that a weakness?
It's a weakness of mine.
Okay, why is that? Is it an emotional thing?
No, it's a lot of planning. And Nicole has seen me pack for a vacation for 2 days. Nicole packed for me when we took our last trip.
Can I ask if your boyfriend's a planner?
I think so. No.
He's not a planner either. Oh my God.
Well, Nicole knows him better than me, evidently.
So yeah, Nicole says that Joe's not a planner, which means you guys.
I don't know.
You guys just both like live by.
Y'all know him.
Yeah,
so
I know, but like you live by both of you just like let's do it. We're going to Florida, and who knows if we'll make it or not.
How much in depth are you talking about not being a planner? It's like, let's just wing it to go to lunch.
Natalie is more of a planner than Joe is.
Oh wow.
But she still hates planning.
Okay, so Natalie hates planning.
So Joe's been trying to get me to go to this dumb Eric Church. Sorry for saying dumb, Joe. On
Eric Church concert.
Yeah, my friend Shane is opening up for Eric Church in Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, Texas, or Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So it's like July.
Okay.
So it's like this opportunity to where Joe could fully take advantage of me and like get back there and maybe touch Eric Church's hand or something. Get the glasses. We were talking about this last night, but he's been asked. So he's been trying to plan that.
A plan.
Right. So he's been trying to plan it, and he's like, "Do you want to drive? Do you want to fly? Do you want to this?" That's for me. I'm going. Well, he's been trying to plan this for like 3 or 4 months, and I just keep going. Oh, do we need to buy tickets? I'm like, if we wouldn't buy tickets. We would just go.
Right.
So I think he's a planner. how this went on south to Joe Haynes being a planner or not.
We haven't
You know,
co-planned
Oh, you haven't
anything
co-planned
really.
anything? It's only been 2 months, right?
Yeah, I don't.
So,
there's not a lot of opportunities.
Planning, you can get really in deep in planning. Like
Okay.
how overboard are you a person that like prints out Google Maps and like puts your stops on there at 3 hours we're going to stop at Buc-ee's in this town and we're going to stop here and then we're going to check in here with my spreadsheet that has your checkoff list.
I think that sucks the fun out of things, but that's also how I
Oh my
sugarcoat
gosh!
it.
All right, so that's how. Well, my wife told me I'm not fun. So
Ever. You're horrible.
And so I actually do that. I have a spreadsheet, and
Oh,
so
if you have a spreadsheet,
she
you're
will
probably not
only
fun.
look at it once a year, and that's if I force her to. Usually she goes, "You got this," and I'm like, "Okay." So
It may have started off south though from the beginning. I don't know if they know the story about you with the PowerPoint.
Oh yeah, well yes. Okay. When we first got married, we had a weekly staff meeting for our family,
And by family, him and Adrian.
yeah. And so we would go through like our finances, the budget, and we'd do green, yellow, red. You know, kind of depending on where we were. Like, how are you doing with your friends? And she'd be like a yellow at friends. I'd be like, okay, that means you need to have at least one more friend thing this week.
Oh no.
And she did not like it, and so after a while, those meetings became a one-man meeting, and
His PowerPoints got worse.
yeah, and she's like, "You're just spending the whole time making sure the red dot's right in the center," and I was like, "Yeah, how are you gonna know if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing? This is how we hold each other accountable." So anyway, I've come a long way in that.
This is where I feel like this is a happy medium. Like planning and these things. My wife she'll make a list for me, which is a beautiful idea. I never knew that I needed a list, but I forget things because I'm like, shoom, shoom, shoom. Yes, making a list now. Now I have to make lists of like, okay, check off. Okay, I did my list. Even when we go on trips, we're packing. It's like, here's your list. Because she'll say, hey, make sure you pack the cooler or this chair and this. No, without a list, I'll just forget. So without her, I would probably, sometimes not do very good. And
Not
she'd
pay
be like,
your
hey,
bills or
where's...
something?
No, I'm good on that.
I don't think I've
okay.
ever packed a phone charger. I forget that every single
See,
time.
she'll forget that. And I'm like, you have this list of things. She's like, do you have a phone charger? I'm like, well, yeah, I get the, essentials. And other,
Wait,
things.
so hey, Laura, did you guys? You're engaged to Jacob now, right? That's still happening,
wow.
right? Yeah, way to go,
Yeah,
way to go,
yeah,
way to go!
thank you,
Clap,
thank
clap,
you.
clap. Pressure's on now for Natalie. No, I'm just kidding.
That would not be pressure for her. It's other people.
So, did you guys plan a budget recently, or were you guys going to plan a budget?
That is a this week plan. Yes.
Okay.
Best of luck with you.
Yeah, man, that sounds stressful.
I don't know though. I will say, like,
You're a pretty chill girl, though.
that is the grace of God. Sincerely.
Are you really this chill? Like, are you this chill like normally?
This is me living life. Yes.
Like, when you get upset, what does it look like?
I'm learning how to not stifle it. Like, I really am this chill, but I'm learning how to actually be upset. That's more
like,
my problem.
Like you're
It's
like, are you an Eeyore? Like you're just monotone Eeyore, emotionless?
Womp.
That's changed in time. I used to just be someone all growing up. I was very much so like, just make sure everything's always good, always good, always good, always good. And then moved here and just like collapsed
that's
everything.
huge.
The Lord pieced
Yeah.
me back together. And I was just like, you know what? Everything's always going to be okay. Like, been through a lot. I don't know. After that, it's just kind of like, I'm not getting phased. God's got me. Like, it's fine.
See, that's nice. And I'm now happy, like, believe in the happy medium where I know for a fact that God's got me faithful, but at the same time need to use wisdom.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say everything that I do is good. It's not, because I'm now learning how to express things. Because from being like, you know what, God's got me is a lot of just like me and God. So I don't always express what I'm feeling. And sometimes assume that people can read my mind and they can't.
Not when you Eeyore it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm learning.
Yeah,
I'm learning you
get that
too.
facial expressions.
Like, man, when I get Lord to smile, I'm like, all right, we're good.
Yeah, we're good, but it might take a while.
She smiles a lot.
Well,
All right.
Sometimes
how
she'll
you
just
feel
stare
into
at you
the
like,
she's like,
Maybe you're not funny.
yeah,
that's
listen,
true.
I was
but
just
she
told-
catches my
No,
sarcasm,
no.
so I love it.
I grew up very sarcastic home, so it's all
It made me so happy.
sarcasm I'm quick
Yeah,
on.
that's great.
I was talking to Nicole and them earlier though about she was like, I kind of thought you'd be more bubbly if you've I mean, no Jacob or ever heard Jacob. He's like, bing, 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 Mr. Fun.
He is fun.
I
can't have two of those.
You can't.
No.
You can't. And us being together, but like he helps me a ton because I used to be way more fun. I think going through recovery changed me also. I was like fun all day, every day. I was like Mrs. Fun. I couldn't quit the fun. So now we're like, yeah.
Oh, so now you're
learning
learning to come back to the fun zone.
Fun without sin.
All right.
Oh,
Hey, listen, if you've got any questions regarding faith,
Trying.
culture, and everything in between, we would love to hear from you. You can text us at 737-231-0605 or go to pastorplek.com. We would love to answer all your questions in due time. And so, hey, if you got any questions for Laura or Natalie, you are more than welcome to send them in. We'll bring
Hey,
them
I'll
back.
take some questions. Why
Cody is
not?
always available. He is always available for those
Something to
questions.
do.
Especially if you want to become a country music star. He's got you. Hey, listen, from our house to yours, have an awesome week of worship.